Hey, everyone, welcome to Combat Radio. Now, with us is everybody's favorite correspondent, Mr. Eric Mark. How are you, Eric?
I am fantastic and even better because I'm getting to hear your voice and see your face on this broadcast.
You know what? That's what we like about you. Eric, in case you didn't know already, that statement proves it. He's everyone's therapist around here. Jumps in, makes everyone come off the ledge. Don't jump. Life is okay. You matter. That's Eric Mark in a nutshell to all of us. All right. So the movie today, we're looking at a classic. I do think it's a classic, directed by my old boss at Warner Brothers, John Milius, Red Dawn.
What's going on here, my friend?
This is the emergency broadcast system. We are under attack by conventional forces of the Russian army. It is believed the lead waves were disguised as commercial charter flights. Communications have broken down with other parts of the country. Large areas of the Midwest may have been overrun.
They know who all of you are. They're looking for you.
You're 40 miles behind enemy lines.
I just want to go home. They took a lot of people away.
Where's my dad, Mr. Eckert?
Want to love somebody, Andy. I'm gonna die before it happens.
They're gonna kill us! All of us!
So why should we be different?
Because we live here!
Not bad for a bunch of kids, huh?
Mama'd be real proud.
Definitely a classic, yeah, one that everybody knows. Had to have a remake done of it, and obviously that did not quite compare to the original. So yeah, just and I'm going to tell you even before we jump into this, Ethan. One thing I did just in advance of this show was, having loved the movie way back in the day, and then on revisits, I just read the entire screenplay. So kind of interesting seeing the source material.
You know, you told me that, and I was actually envious of you being able to do that because um you know I've never read the script. I talked to Milius about the movie when I was working in his office, but I never read the script. I never saw the remake. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm not that much into self-punishment, but I was curious about how the script flowed because I would ask Milius things like he didn't actually have a copy of Red Dawn in his office. Surprisingly, he had copies of everything, mostly copies of movies he wanted to produce: Sante Raid, Daniel Boone, Manila John, based on John Basilone from World War II. He had those projects ready to go, but I never saw a Red Dawn script. So I'm actually very envious. What did you learn reading the script? How did it flow
I
to
gotta
you?
tell you, having read many scripts, and written some myself, I'd never seen one formatted quite like this. I mean, this was the shooting script, and yet it just had it had an enormous amount of scenes. Like in a 110-page script, there was the final scene was number 375. Oh no, what am I saying? 400 and 24. So 424 delineated scenes. And a
Wow.
lot of they didn't start off with normal slug lines like, exterior, Ethan's place, day. They just say like sometimes it has a place like street, other times it just says close Jed, as if it's a shot. And then it
Mhm.
goes into the stage or the action items and the dialogue. So that alone was interesting. I mean, it read kind of in a cinematic way. So that was
Yeah.
kind of cool, yeah. But also the
Well,
other thing that I just got to bring up, and we'll come back to it. There's a major character in this so-called shooting script, and this is apparently Milius's script, like that someone scanned. That's not actually in the movie. Like the lead female role ahead of Leah Thompson and Jennifer Grey's characters.
Both Gray and Thompson are great in it, actually, and Thompson's gone on to be a pretty incredible director. But it's funny. I want to talk about this deleted character because I knew nothing about it till you reported it. But I do love that Milius always thinks in cinematic terms. Even in his own scripts, he can break a format because it's what he wants to get to you through the screen. And I love that about him. It's this original draft. The original idea was Kevin Reynolds, Prince of Thieves fame, who I've also met when I was at Warner Brothers. But the final product reeks of Milius, and so much so that I think people at the time had an opinion of the film based on what their opinion was of Milius. And if you saw him as an extremist, then this movie was full of extremists. But I will say this out of the gate before we deep dive this. If there was a movie for me that was so perfect within the time it hit, it was this. There was nothing better. Look at the pieces to this. Great casting. They were characters just a little older than us at the time. So we identified it was against the great Soviet boogeyman, right? So we had our enemy cut out right in front of us, target sighted. And then you have this brilliant soundtrack that Basil put together. And just like the whole thing worked. And the action sequences are actually pretty good. Now, I've heard people make arguments about it feeling disjointed, if like things were cut. It doesn't feel that way to me. To me, it feels pretty tight.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I agree. Certainly about the timing. Talk about a movie that was right for the moment, especially right now that we're in Olympic season in 2024, all these years later. But you got to remember, this came out, when the first of all the U.S. boycotted the Soviet Union Olympics in 19. And then the U.S. boycotted, or the Soviets boycotted the American ones. So all of these things are playing out, on the world stage. And of course, it's the middle of the Reagan years. And what we didn't know, the coming up on the collapse of the Soviet Union. Of course, we also didn't know there's a guy named Vlad Putin who was going to bring it all back. But that happens a few decades later. But all of these things happen in real life at the same time as this coming out. So is it extreme? Yeah. There's a lot going on and there's a lot of intense stuff, particularly for a movie, featuring a bunch of kids. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people who felt that it resonated more so than in some of the, some of the ridiculous conspiracy theories we hear now. Like, for people, they thought, well, this was still the Cold War, right? So, and just became less cold thing.
What I love about it is it takes off right out of the gate. They're literally check into history class. And of course, the history lectures on Genghis Khan, typical Milius, and right out the window. And that's a member of John Stock Company who plays that teacher. He showed up in the Nick Nolte film later. He was in Big Wednesday. But right out of the gate, the Soviet paratroopers are coming down.
Be allowed to go free. Well, now, my friend. Well, now.
Oh, check it out. All right. You look pretty cool, though, man.
I would say they were way off course. This is very unusual.
You do something, Mr. Teasdale.
Go Zielis! Go Zielis, my friend! Overshibu!
course, you can raise the question, would they machine gun a school? I didn't know. As a kid, I just loved the movie. I wasn't sure, why is this small town of Calumet a target? But in talking to John, he said, look, the entire movie, the strategy behind the Soviet attack is based on a real attack that he said was a German war game study during World War II. How would a German tank corps invade the United States? And they would do it through Mexico. And so he had an entire, and some of this data was passed to him by like some of these guys on the Joint Chiefs, John being, plugged into all these generals and people saw guys. So he would always explain that it was a real attack plan that he based the movie on. And he made it plausible, at least to me, that, okay, here's what happened. Mexico plunges into revolution. NATO dissolves. The Greens party makes gains. They get the nukes off European territory. He sets the stage in a rather efficient fashion for the landscape to be real. And what Milius said was they're attacking the town because it's a target for paratroopers to keep something in the town, like a causeway open or something. Like that was what isn't stated. That, it's funny because today a movie exec would say, you need to have a conversation exactly why that is. Have your characters explain that to the audience. And he lets a lot of things go that you'd have to kind of figure out or surmise for yourself, which I love, is because it doesn't take away from the rhythm of the movie. But they attack the town for logistical reasons, that they're holding something open. The Russians are holding some sort of avenue open for armored troops. And there's some insinuation of that later. And as far as the kids go, that was pretty typical of the age of like Soviet partisans in the World War II era, and that's kind of what they're based on. And even their tactics to some extent are based on of like the partisans against, the German regiments rolling through Russia. So I feel like that all hit home, and he would explain that. But what's great is when you read the script and you can visually see it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize a character does this character live in the movie?
Well, I guess it doesn't matter. It's a spoiler for anyone who's going to read the screenplay. Should I say it or should I not? Yeah. Say? Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll tell you what, say it. And if you really don't want to hear the answer, cover your ears for 30 seconds.
Okay. So this character, Sandy, who's right in it from the beginning. And as I say, is the top female character in this movie and is Jed's girlfriend. Yeah, she dies heroically at the end.
Oh, that's typical Milius too.
Yeah.
She probably does, knowing John, she probably does something like wraps herself up in a grenade and, throws herself on a tank or something. Or
you guessed something very close to what happened. Yeah.
It's once I was around the guy so much, you kind of know how his mind works. And like I can identify Milius's work in any script, but particularly this script. And I love when, every single conversation reeks of vintage Milius. And Smith makes an appearance in this too, as like a Russian sort of insurgency expert. And he worked for the CIA. Now he shows up in Conan. He was even on like Kolchak, the Night Stalker back in the 70s. But he shows up speaking Russian. He was a linguist for the CIA or did some linguist work, or the work of a linguist, I should say. And he's like, here's how we catch him. And there's that scene where they like raid up there in their snow gear because they've captured one and made him swallow a homing device, which we don't see that in the film. I don't know. Is that in the script? Is there a scene where they capture this guy and shove a homing device down his throat after they torture him?
I mean, in the script, so Daryl is captured by, well, he's not captured.
Right.
His father took him in, and he has a homing device that he swallows, and then he and the Soviet lieutenant Yuri are brought before a firing squad at the same time.
Yeah.
Of the kids.
Danny, the bolt's open, it's jammed. Danny, hey.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
So what if he does? You don't. We better get out of here.
Haben Glaze?
Shoot him! What is this thing?
What is it? Who's coming after us? Where are they?
Rub a butt on him. Ah! Fuck at you! Got that for your mother! I hear a chopper, and I'm gonna blow your brains out. Go die, Yankee. Die. God give you some. Gorski, Stepan Eugenievich, suck. No one gives a damn who you are! They're gonna hurt him! Good! Hey, look! This thing's got an arrow. It's pointing. It's Where? Right here.
Daryl. Where is it? Where is it? God damn it! Where's the bug?
They made me swallow it.
Daryl, what have you done?
I went into town.
Got caught. And we got caught.
Interesting scene to cut, or to not have in the final film. However, it was devised and then executed. Because it's a lot to jump to. It's like, now with the world and critics and everyone being a self-imposed critic and the world being what it is, like people find ways to dismantle everything. But you look at it now, and how did this guy disappear for so long, and how did they not know he was in town, turned in by his dad, who's a perfect person to turn him in because he's the politic.
Yeah.
He's the political element in this. And he gets back and he causes this havoc. And by the way, we should also say it's Daryl from The Outsiders. He played a punk then. He's a punk now, but great actor, actually, underappreciated. A lot of outsiders in this, or outsider adjacent actors in this film.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. Friends of the outsiders.
Yeah.
Insiders. The inside outside.
But they sell it. There's a sense of authenticity to the performances in this that I don't have any issues with. I buy it. I buy Swayze in this. I buy C. Thomas Howell. I buy Sheen. I buy it. They don't start off as Rambo-esque partisans. They run initially. They try to hide and run. And then, of course, reprisals take place, as they always do, until the Soviet insurgent Smith shows up and says, this was dumb. Don't do this. But it's just a great, and Gray and Thompson should not be overlooked in the conversation.
Yeah.
Thompson has become a director. She's constantly trying to hire Eric Mark, but his price is too high. But she's really good in this. She sells this, and she survives too. Gray, unfortunately, goes out. She probably has Sandy's death, I bet, in the script. Where the helicopter, is it related to a helicopter attack? Did I just spoil it again for the people who?
Yeah. I mean, that is a spoiler. But in the script, is that what happens in the movie? Because in the script, Leah's Thompson, Erica, definitely, she dies. Jennifer's character survives.
Right.
Yeah, and Leah's character runs after Andy, after Powers Booth's character, as he's being fired upon by not by a helicopter, by one of those vertical takeoff and landing planes. A Harrier or some sort of Harrier-esque. The Soviet equivalent. It's funny because all these vehicles had to be built by like the Values A's, and they're actually out by me. Their production ranch isn't too far. It's where Schwarzenegger keeps his tank. But they had to build all these Soviet era. What's that? Yeah, as people do. People just For everyone who owns a tank, you can keep it at the Values A production ranch. But they had to build these things, and they had to build them where they had sort of a sense of operational reality. So like the turrets had to shift and things like that.
And that took some doing because, you didn't have access to Soviet hardware of this nature at the time. Now you could probably get it on the black market. You could probably call some third-rate Afghani arms dealer and have all this stuff shipped to you on a tanker. But back then you had to build it. And they did quite a good job on it. They blow a lot of it up. That's believable too. There's a lot of RPG work in this movie. I mean, they love the rocket in this, and it's convincing. And it's got an interesting tick to it. My understanding was a lot of the extras who play the Russians were local hires. So they probably had a good experience. I mean, there's some scenes cut out, like there's a McDonald's scene. And Milius told me that he actually said to me, I vividly remember this being so attached to the movie. I remember asking him about missing scenes because I was always fascinated with that.
Yeah.
And he said not too much was cut out of it, but he did say there was a scene where they shoot a rocket through a farmhouse that they're seeing from a distance, and inside is like a family frozen at the dinner table. Is that in the script?
Yes.
Yeah.
They launched an RPG at it, and it goes right through.
Yeah, it goes right through and explodes behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So you read that. Incredible. Yeah. So
good memory of an anecdote that wasn't it, and here I am to fact check or fiction check your recollection. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and he said something like it was symbolic. Everything Milius does is, I think, on some level symbolic. And he said it was like the old like a family trying to maintain those family principles and basically dying with those principles. He had some explanation for it, but it was interesting. And beyond that, that was the one scene he outlined that had been cut out of it. And Milius doesn't, to my knowledge, make a cameo in this, though he often does in some of his other stuff, Conan and Big Wednesday. I didn't see him in this. I don't see him in this. Alexander Haig, though, was a major contributor to I wouldn't say the script, but to the tech in support of the script. So do you have a moment in this that you really like?
I agree with you that the opening is just so dramatic. I mean, it's it starts as the action is happening, and it's I think it takes off quicker than you'd expect something. It's not about exposition. Like, I mean, there's this mini exposition at the beginning, like just like the lesson and some title cards and stuff, but then it just goes. I mean, that's the way to do that, right? So
yeah, I think so. And he keeps it on a small town perspective. So it's like the broad Soviet American political elements. Those are left out of the small town realities. Like they just know what's dropping in their backyard and they react. And of course, Howl's got a Star Wars hat on, a little throwback to John Milius's buddy, George Lucas. And there's other little, I saw other little pick-me-ups revisiting this film that were definitely like an homage to certain friends. I always look at these movies now and think, oh, what's the reverse of what the characters are seeing? Because in the beginning, they bolt out of town. They go to a truck stop. They load up arrows, football, lanterns, buck knife, all that stuff. And they take to the mountains to live, not to become guerrillas, which they ultimately do, but they take to the mountains. And like American choppers come in at like rooftop level and blow a blockade apart. And I always think those are the characters I also want to know about. The guys flying the choppers into the town that's been taken by Soviet paratroopers. Like that's your little side story, comic sidebar, parallel universe storyline that's interesting, and they blow these guys up and the dudes get away.
Open the glove compartment. Is it there? Yeah. Load it. It's already loaded. Give it here. Want these also, Jim? Yeah, put them in the pocket. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. We're gonna turn off quick.
The performances you know, for everyone who loves to jump on Milius as an extremist, and I constantly tell people he's not. Um, I know it's hard for people to get their head around that, but he really is not. Not based on work you may know and you may see, but knowing the man himself, he was not an extremist, but he did know that, you know, he wrote about situations like this where things go south. These guys are not like heroic, pro violent partisans. These guys are very reluctant participants until they get to a point. He stacks it so well against these characters, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's just this is something that sort of reflects a bunch of people who reluctantly find themselves in circumstance, recognize, you know, the gravity of the situation, and,
Mhm.
and some of whom are still, you know, very reticent about it. I mean, and reticent is not like resistant to it, you
Right.
know. And I love that. I love that Jed, you know, he's tough. He's the, you know, that Swayze's character is, you know, is the leader, but in moments alone,
Yeah.
you know, is staggered by the gravity of it, and even the, you know, and even the the actions he and the others have taken. He recognizes the gray zones they're going through.
You know, it's a very realistic approach for him because it's like that is exactly the realities I think he'd be faced with. Like you have to hold this thing together, but there's moments where you just cannot believe you're in the thick of it. And what they give him to see, it's not just the occupation of the town, which is hard enough, but the father in the what is the concentration camp, followed by the mother that's missing and other people's parents who've been killed and reprisals they witness based on trying to save their own skin when the Russians go up. That's a classic scene too. The Russians go up and read like the monumental, you know, signage of like, this is where the peasant Native Americans rose up against the Roosevelt imperialistic forces. And you know, he tells the whole story as if it's some kind of like Western, expansionist like occupation, which it was, right? But he's got
Yeah,
his own kind
yeah.
of view. And then, of course, that leads to them killing these dudes. And that leads to the reprisals. And, you know, again, bad means more bad means more bad means more bad, and it just escalates in a situation where finally the town is a target and it's getting blown apart. Do you think the Russians ever made an equivalent of this, like where Americans invade, you know,
I don't
Moscow
know if it was.
or
I don't know if they did it for the general public. I'm sure they did it for the troops and for
yeah,
the KGB.
yeah? Do you think they showed this to like their armed forces and said, "This is what we're up against. These American capitalistic pigs are making movies about you." You know, do you think they ever incorporated it or no?
Uh, on one hand, I could believe them do it from training purposes. On the other hand, I could also believe them trying to withhold, you know, any notion that the enemy
Mhm.
had any strength and resilience. You know,
Yeah,
because
I
you know,
also
I sorry, I was just gonna say, I think we the West were portrayed as, you know, being weak imperialist pigs, and that we have no, you know, that we don't have any gumption, as you like to say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the timing of this piece was so significant too. Like the when this landed, it was so appropriate because they were the big threat every night. It was Star Wars, Reagan. It was like the Iceland summit. Everything was kind of factored into the world's craziness. And that's the thing you highlighted earlier is the world stage was set that this movie was kind of like the Rocky equivalent. Like we're dealing with this every day in reality. Here's a movie where we knock them out and call it quits. And it ends with an American flag blowing on a US monument. So you know how it ends. But the soundtrack is incredible. One of the best I think ever put to film. The opening is great. Just to open it with a cloud shot with the paratroopers coming in and then making the whole thing plausible, at least in my mind, I think is quite an accomplishment. And Booth isn't bad in it either.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no
I know.
problem with Powers. I mean,
No, I
what
know.
were you
I
gonna
know
say?
you and Powers Booth are. I know you and Powers Booth are at odds. But
No, we
uh,
no, we have our moments. We, you know, there's still a lot of man love in between us, you know. So,
yeah, you know, I know he took your role in Tombstone and then later took it
well,
in Deadwood. But I
you
mean,
know,
hey, you
hey,
know,
hey, hey, hey. Just, you know, you roll with
uh, you do roll with it. So, also, you know what I seem to remember about this is this was the first movie, maybe, well, no, not the first movie, but this was a movie with a napalm strike in it. And you know, I'd seen that we'd seen that in Apocalypse Now, and we'd seen it in Hamburger Hill, which I think may have been after this, but that's like some high tech weaponry. I remember Milius telling me that Coppola's big fear when they did the napalm strike in Apocalypse Now was that the gas line ran for like a mile. and they were afraid
Wow.
like some native kid would be playing by it
Jeez.
when
Yeah.
they triggered it. So they had to have all these guys watch the fuel line. And then when it was time to ignite it for the scene, they had to like run for their lives, and they were given a clock to count. And this is why you work in the Philippines sometimes, right? Where they, you know, you couldn't do that here.
No.
Those guys watched for kids and then ran. They were given like 60 seconds to get to a dugout. Then boom, up goes the napalm. You get the shot.
Wow.
So I saw that in this movie too. And I was like, that's not easy to put on film. There takes a lot of work and safety elements to that. So it's kind of nice to see that they were ambitious with this. Best World War III film, would you say?
Uh,
Trying to think of
certainly
some
up there.
others.
Yeah, I'm just, but I gotta say, definitely up top, you know. And I let me say this about your boy Powers Booth, though. I mean, you know, you got to give the guy respect because he starred in Sudden Death, right? So I mean, how many action hockey movies are there?
Whoa, well, that's true. I mean, and now you're
And
also
as a
throwing
Canadian
in,
boy, obviously, I respect that, right? So
yes, and you're throwing in a Jean-Claude Van Damme element. So now it's getting tough to beat. It's a full house. We're going up against a full house. I mean, Powers Booth had done some unique movies. I mean, one of my favorites being Southern Comfort for Walter Hill. He had a quality about him. He had kind of an everyday, everyman quality about him. I thought he was quite effective. And, you know, in this, I know who was supposed to get that part originally and why he didn't get it, according to him. So I'm going to leave his name out of it because I'm not sure if his story stacks up. Booth was not the first choice for this, but he's a very good choice. He delivers. He's great opposite the kids. I wonder, do you think this, do you think this was a vehicle for Swayze at the time? Do you think they went straight to him and he took it? Or do you think there was somebody?
I mean, I kind of assumed it was, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Yeah.
It's hard to imagine anyone else playing that part now, right? Especially in the time.
Yeah.
You know? And and I understand that he and Gray kind of had a difficult time working together, but they did it again in Dirty Dancing, so it must have not been that tough. You know, it's really interesting. C. Thomas Howell too, who I first saw in E.T. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
BMX Bandit.
You know, I rewatched E.T. on the big screen last year. You know, just whenever these things.
How was it?
It's still amazing. Yeah.
Cool. I remember I saw that movie twice in one day. Anyway, continue.
No, anytime that some of the classics, old and new, come and those are, I guess, considered pretty old at this point. But you know, I just saw Close Encounters on the big screen again.
Incredible.
Yeah. So
featuring the work of our buddy Joe Alves, one of our favorites here.
Oh yeah. Also, my
Carl
and a friend of mine, his dad's the guy who coined the term Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In fact, he coined the term Close Encounters of the First, Second, Third, and Fourth Kinds, and so he was an advisor on the film. And he's the subject of the History Channel docudrama, Blue Book, I believe. About the physicist who works with the Air Force. Either originally to debunk the notion of UFOs, and then ends up becoming sort of goes a bit native. Yeah.
So I didn't mean to talk over you. You want to finish your thought on that?
No, that's it.
I was going to say, so I thought we were going to have an Ancient Aliens homage. I'm glad we didn't. But Steve Surchik and I always talked about that. We were looking at that film. What's the Andromeda Strain? And we were talking about how there's probably a group that deals with this thing. And when someone knocks on the door, when there's like an Air Force sedan or what would most likely be some kind of unmarked vehicle, for film purposes, it would be an Air Force sedan. But they knock on the door and they have a code word like there's a fire. And like the physicist or the algebra guy or whoever it may be, the chemistry expert, they respond. They know exactly what it means. They never expect to hear it, but when they do, they know what to do. And you figure like with Close Encounters, there's probably a group like that too, especially now because there's all that UFO. I know that's a dated term, but there's all that UFO footage now, or what they say is unidentified flying object footage. You know, what do you make of all that, by the way?
Seems like there's things, whether they're extraterrestrial or not, I don't know, but there's obviously things people are seeing.
That's a great quote. Well, it seems like there's things.
Yes,
by the way,
there are things. That could be a t-shirt. There are things.
Oh, I'm going to let you have it. I'm going to let you have it because you came up with it. So go with that. Get your spread shop going now. And while you're looking at spread shops that say there are things with a UFO, you can go to our spread shop and donate to charity, brigaderadio1.org. Also, I think Close Encounters, now that you mentioned it, is a really well-written movie. That movie also came across very believable to me, not just in the time, but even now looking at it.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Having just seen it, not only does it stand up, feels real.
A34, F27. It's M Mary 10 through M Mary 12. Okay.
1047.
It's all meaningless so far. Okay, come on. All right, let's see. We stop leads you to the single circuits and leads you right to nowhere. M Mary 10.
Unit 211. 1030. 57.
I remember they have that meeting, and what's it? Roberts Blossom is in it, and he talks about seeing Bigfoot or hearing Bigfoot, and that's the comparison he makes. And the guy says, "This is a UFO." You know, the Air Force officer charged with debunking all the sightings. He's like, "It's a dinner plate thrown across my neighbor's lawn," or something like that. But the idea that they would gas people to keep them out of an area. Carl's Weathers makes an appearance in that.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Francois Poe has the big role as the
With Lance Hendrickson as his bodyguard. Yeah. Some real talent. Now the question for you is, do you get in the spaceship like Dreyfuss does, or do you just sit back, have a drink, and wave him off?
Well, I know what you would do. You'd be in there before, like the ETs would be be walking out. They'd be.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't even let him down the ramp. I'd be like, "Up the ramp, guys. We're out of here. We're off
You would
this
cut
rock."
behind them. You would cut behind them. You'd leave. You'd say, "Hey, I'll leave a few of you guys behind. I'm just in case you don't have enough food and drink left in this place."
Yeah, they need a couple of you to decorate their lobotomy table, but me, I'm out of here. Let's go. Let's get rolling. So I'm out. So you're out too, I guess, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I got things to see.
You know, there's two scenes that make the movie for me. One is the Flight 19 opening, which is a strong opening for that film, I think. But also there's that moment, and I'm not sure if it's in the original cut or it's the director's cut, where they find the ship in the desert.
快点！他们来了吧？
it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
It's the Cotopaxi.
Why is it here?
Beats the shit out of me.
Mongolian desert, or the Gobi Desert. And that's really well done. And I think that opens up all kinds of possibilities.
You know, when they come over, and then there's the there's folks on camels, and then suddenly the military comes marching or blasting over the sand dunes.
Yeah, the military would botch it, though. Unfortunately, come on, the military would definitely botch First Contact. For all the things they do well, First Contact is not something I want to solely entrust to them. But this conversation makes me think. I know the Close Encounters is in the 70s, but Red Dawn in the 80s, and we highlighted Outsiders because of the cast. But the 80s is a decade that really had some great films in it. Platoon, The Thing, Empire Strikes Back, Goonies. It's really, you think of that decade, and man, there was a lot of fun movies that came out with those guys in that decade.
Oh yeah, and the Blues Brothers, of course.
Is that? Yeah, that would be 1980, right?
1980. So
it's Spielberg makes an appearance in it.
Absolutely, and as does Frank Oz. I mean, it's bookended by Frank Oz at the beginning, and then Spielberg at the end. So two great directors.
Somebody else we know is in it too. I don't know why I'm drawing a block on it, but we have a good friend in it, and I cannot think of who it is. I showed that to Sean for the first time. I've been showing her a lot of these movies, and it's interesting to get a modern day, a very current kid's perspective on some of this stuff, because I showed her like Midnight Run and Beverly Hills Cop, and admittedly, those films, great in their time, just doesn't have the power for a 21-year-old today. It was kind of like, all right.
Really, Midnight Run does not.
So I remember seeing that in the theater, thinking that was hilarious. Yeah. And I don't know if we've seen it ripped off or reimagined elements in that so many times since, but I only laughed once or twice, and it was at Grodin's performance, because he is, and it's one of them's when he's imitating De Niro, of course. That's one of the classic bits where he does both parts. He's like, hello, shut up. That whole bit was, so I kind of laugh, but I get her perspective too, where she, the writing and the television and delivery is just, it's so different now that I feel like she appreciated it and she respected it, but she was like, I don't know if I'm watching Midnight Run again. I can't speak for her, but that's kind of the vibe I got. But that was good. That was a fun movie. Remember that?
Yeah. I mean, then it was fresh when De Niro was lampooning himself and doing a comic riff on his character. When that became his main thing for a while, then it became him stepping on his own legacy. I mean, Meet the Parents was great. Analyze This was great, but then sequels to all of those, suddenly all he was doing, was riffs on his persona, and that because he still got it, but he was acting as if he was acting as if that's what he needed to do, just like it was a nostalgia act, picking apart his old stuff.
A couple things about this that, to your point, number one, you're right. Two, Midnight Run is what makes it fantastic to me, is the secret ingredient in a lot of films, which is Yaphet Kotto. Yaphet Kotto is the magic element. I mean, honestly, you could cast Yaphet Kotto for me as Scrooge. You can cast him as Quint in Jaws. Yaphet Kotto, it's not the dimension you want, but it's the dimension you deserve sometimes. Yaphet Kotto he brought a lot of Yaphet Kotto magic, but also, to your point to De Niro, we had him on a couple movies at Warner Brothers. I'm sure your cousin has told you. And what we suspect, what feature development thought at the time, because that wasn't, no one missed the point you made. Everyone was like, why is he doing this? The guy was Taxi Driver. He was in The Godfather 2. Yeah. And what the consensus was that De Niro was just tired of the level of dedication his craft took for decades. And he just kind of wanted to work, but not with the labor of having to be De Niro. And that's what we kind of deduced between the ground on the set and in the office. And right or wrong, the guy gets to a point where he can choose the projects and do what he wants to do. And And likewise, we can have an opinion about him. But that makes sense when you hear it, though, doesn't it? Like he
Absolutely.
kind of,
Yeah, I can give him that. And I mean, I'm not criticizing. I mean, he's one of the greats. He's one of my favorites. He's amazing. He owned the 70s and the 80s, and with Pacino and Hoffman, and
yeah,
of course Pacino post Scent of a Woman just became the
yeah,
hoo-ah guy.
yeah. I
But
mean,
before that, he was really good too.
I mean, look, Pacino gave us a lot of magic and continues to some degree. I think like I kind of felt like Heat was in a way the last stand for those guys. They've had some performances since, of course, but that was like the last big. And that's a movie I do not love. I know I get a lot of hate for that. People love that film. I personally think that the actors in it are underutilized and it goes in places it doesn't need to go. But that's just my opinion. But I think that was kind of like the last hurrah for those guys.
It is a bit windy, that story for
Yeah.
for what it is, and the whole De Niro and Pacino never meeting up kind of thing is interesting.
Yeah, and this is sacred territory. There's people that absolutely love that movie and they worship every frame. And that's okay. I mean, a good friend of ours is the villain in that Waingro, Kevin Gage. We love him. And he didn't expect to get it. Got the part because he looked like Jesus. And he is by far one of the great, outstanding people as well as actors out there. And so in that sense, you're rooting for it. But do we need to see this guy go off the track, kill prostitutes? Do we need to see Val Kilmer's relationship fall apart? Do we need to, see De Niro fall in love with the woman? I mean, I think you need that one, actually, now that I talk about it. I think you need that one. But do you need to see Natalie Portman not get along? I mean, for me, like a lot of that stuff, I don't need. But for other people who are film purists, they love all that drama that's tied to it. I'm just like, hey, man, blow the armor truck, go. Like, look, I don't need to see the family drama. Let's just get to the elements and start having them face off, because that's really what the movie was about to me. And hey, it's an opinion. So film bros, back off me if you don't like what you're hearing. Go ahead and watch the movie. You're welcome to. There's some good people in it. There's some really good people in it. Henry Rollins.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, I did see, like, talking about movies on the big screen. I did go watch the 25th anniversary screening of it with Michael Mann.
Oh, and how was Michael at it?
He had a lot to say. I mean, it was good though. I mean, it was like I saw it at the the Village Theater in Westwood, and so it was a good place to see a movie with a lot with a lot of diehard fans, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
It was
only diehard fans go to that stuff, right? I mean, serious fans, I mean, I'm glad you went. You are always at those things. You are always at the point of interest, Eric. I got to give you that, dude. You are a man about town.
Well, Michael I am interested. I'm not so interested, but I'm very interested.
I'd like to hear what Michael Mann had to say. And actually, I thought he made a real good run at The Insider. That was a subject matter that if he handed me the script, I don't know if I'd buy it, but he made it really interesting. And he was known as a guy that got very loud at Warner Brothers. He was not, probably in ways he shouldn't have. But that's between me and Mann. We'll have that conversation at some point down the road. And I miss the guy. Michael, look me up. We'll talk Manhunter.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk Miami Vice. Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter had to start somewhere. Yeah.
Right. Great work. Manhunter, Miami Vice. I love it all. But yeah, I mean, I just because, Heat feels like it's 20 minutes too long in ways I don't really love and respect doesn't mean it can't be an exceptional movie for some. I totally encourage, go out and, hey man, go watch Miami Connection today. Have fun. You know what I mean? If that's your thing, go for it. I'm glad you were there. Did he tell you anything you didn't know about it? Or did you know everything there was to know?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that, but he was definitely engaging, and I mean, a lot of a lot of passion. So it was a good thing to see. Yeah. So.
What is your favorite film of all time, Eric Mark?
To Catch a Thief. 1955, Hitchcock, Cary Grant, Grace Kelly.
Of all time.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Prized possessions is the an original one sheet from that.
Really?
So.
All right. Well, that's good. That's respectable.
Not what you expected.
No, it's not what I expected, I admit, but I get it.
Even people, some people think it's even lightweight Hitchcock in a way, but it's I find it beguiling. It's it's a great great film. Carrie and Grace exemplify what it means to be cool,
Yeah,
and and I love the south of France, and yeah, it's
there you
got
go. So the connections between audience and the movies, audience members and the movies they love is, it's not possible for us all to interpret it, but it should all be respected. So I think that's a good choice. And if that's the movie that does it for you, I'm glad you got it. I'm glad you have that movie.
Yeah, I've probably seen it like 10 times on the big screen at least.
Wow.
Just over the years, and so
Wow.
seen I do love the Grace Kelly Hitchcock movies. So I've seen like the 3D version of Dial M for Murder on the big screen a few times.
Right.
And then of course seen Rear Window many times.
Well,
What's your number one movie?
well, I'll answer that in a minute because it's kind of a broad answer. But I will say, as a guy who was based, who had an office in the Hitchcock building,
Yeah, no, that's
I,
it was a thrill for me whenever I was in recording with you guys. I
yeah.
mean, just
And can you believe? I mean, it had the Hitchcock silhouette on the side of the building,
yeah.
and it was. I thought it was holy ground, but they ripped it right down for Nintendo Land, and they said, guess what? You guys are moving over into the Verna Fields building, which is named after the editor of Jaws, obviously, and is a nice fit. But I'm like, wait, we're tearing down the Hitchcock building for Nintendo Land? It's just one of those things where, is there no respect for the history? Like, that's our only option, to destroy this building, and it's named that because of the work that was done inside it. It's not a token name. It wasn't a token name, I should say. It wasn't like, what do we call it? Let's call it the Hitchcock building. I mean, that's where the post on the film you're talking about was probably done.
Amazing, yeah.
And it's gone for Super Mario Kart or whatever the fuck they've put over there. Right up the street, about 100 yards from my office, even that was Lon Chaney Avenue, that was probably ripped out too. It was like, dude, don't we know what we're doing here? Like, that's where like the heart and soul of the business is. Is those early film, those pioneers.
Yep.
That got it done for us, and that led to the things we're talking about today: Heat.
Oh yeah,
Red Dawn.
So much of what we know came, from these guys, and like, and just just the innovations. I mean, that they had, and just like, because there wasn't a template to follow back then. I mean, you're making,
I mean, Hitchcock proved that. I think if you can you imagine being an executive like in the modern era, but being back in those days when you would try to tell Hitchcock what your notes were? Can you imagine telling Hitchcock or John Ford you had notes, or Orson Welles you had notes?
Well, especially the latter, that would be
yeah. Can you just imagine that? It'd be like ridiculous. I mean, can you tell Kurosawa you have notes? I just don't see. I mean, it's kind of like it would almost guarantee you'd be buried on the back lot someplace. But it is kind of funny because that's now like the trust level and the money, the way that everything flows. You got to have, the committee, unfortunately, is in place to, regulate every decision. Michael Mann can tell you all about that,
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so what's next for you?
Several things. It's funny. I think I mentioned we did a little short during the pandemic, and I co-wrote and co-starred in, and we want to take it to some of the bigger festivals, but just because it was local for me, we debuted it in the Marina Del Rey Film Festival a couple weeks ago, and this was the crazy thing. My co-star, it's a small festival, but over 350 shorts, won Best Supporting Actor, which was so kudos to Brian Fleck, who again co-wrote and co-starred with me. But here's the thing: not a full-time actor by any means. I mean, he's a guy who used to be the head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Alberta. I mean,
whoa,
yeah, bright guy.
Yeah,
trying to expand his horizons, and he expanded it to a Best Supporting Actor win. So,
awesome.
There you go. That was fun.
Good. Congratulations. Yeah. What's next for the film, and where can people see it?
So can't see it yet, but as I said, we're trying to enter it into some of the bigger festivals at this point, over the next several months, and we will see what happens.
If I'm not mistaken, Warner Brothers veteran Miguel Tejeda's got a small contribution to this film. If I'm not wrong, is that true?
No, it's not true, because his contribution is huge. So he
Oh,
was,
exactly. I undermined him, but I do think he told me he worked on it for a bit with you. You know,
we had two main locations for this short. You know, just this castle like house in the Hollywood Hills that someone owned us, which was really cool, and then also a hotel suite where some shenanigans go down, and Miguel,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, Miguel
He told me.
aced the
He
sound
told me.
in
Yeah.
that, and yeah, I'm sure he told you it was not necessarily a performance or even a scenario you'd expect from me necessarily, but it
Oh.
isn't To Catch a Thief. It is it is something of its own. It was
Well,
something.
you and Miguel are absolute masters at your craft. So where can we find this thing? Where can we see it?
I will be back on and I'll let you know when we get past the festival run where where it ends up landing. But yeah, there's that.
Proud of you, man.
Thanks, buddy. And then EJ Kavunis, a friend
Another
of the,
genius. Yeah.
Well, and EJ and I we were doing our
Rick's fun.
sci-fi show on the network, and then he had this. Well, he produced a film with Mira Sorvino and Sean Astin, and then just before the pandemic, and then I was on board to produce with him his next film. That we got into pre-production and stuff, and then unfortunately there was a lockdown, and that did not help.
Oh.
And so we ended up hiring a writer from Fear the Walking Dead to turn it into a 10-episode web series starring in the lead our boy Peter Shinkota.
Right.
Amongst other friends, of this show, and kind of amazingly, so a year after we released it, and it's still up on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you get your podcasts. Broken Road was in the top 15 shows on Apple, sci-fi podcast a year after it was released. So we were pretty happy about that.
No surprise, man. A lot of ultra talented people there and a lot of good human beings. So I'm glad to hear it was a success. We'll be rooting for you. We have a vested interest in seeing you succeed. And of course, you are a standout human being. So we want the best for you. And you're a creative guy too. And I have seen you in movies where I've said publicly and privately, you were the best thing in it. And you were definitely, you are an underappreciated acting talent. Not to mention a pretty intrepid writer and producer. You are what we refer to in the business as a triple threat, my friend. For us, we're not up to anything half as exciting, but the release of No Quarter Kill All Masters. The book is out. The audiobook, 30 chapters of Steel, Body Bags, and Chaos, is available. And the comic book has just landed in 16 shops this week. It's new. It only came out about a week ago, but it's available. There's also a Kindle version if you like that kind of thing. I personally think it's sacrilegious, but whatever. There is a Kindle version.
An amazing accomplishment. If I'm a triple threat, I mean, people talk about multi-hyphenates and all the people who do. You're more like an infinite hyphenate.
Oh, too kind.
Yes, you ride every hyphen.
See, that's why we love Eric Mark. He makes everyone feel good about himself. Look, it was fun to do, and it's there for those people that we'll actually put a little trailer in this since we don't have a trailer of Broken Road, or maybe we will by the time this show's over or goes to air. But yeah, we did that. And also November 21st is a Combat Radio Christmas Carol. Spoke with Ron Perlman today, reached out to Tom Arnold, having an afternoon conversation with Paul Reiser. Interesting cast members in the mix, including Vincent Martella, the Phineas and the Phineas and Ferb, and David Arrigo, and a bunch of the stalwarts that have made things fantastic, including Eric Mark, who is everyone's favorite element to any charity event we do. He is by far the best thing about all of it. November 21st. What's that?
Yeah, I literally cannot wait. Yes. November 21st. Yes.
See, look at the enthusiasm, people. Did you see that? Did you see the unbridled enthusiasm? Look, the guy is having a panic attack. He's so enthused. Beverly Hills, the Saban Theater, November 21st. Red carpet at 5 or so. But it's a party not to be missed, and it's a good cause. Benefiting the Guffey Jackson Foundation, young people, children with NMOSD, and you can do something about it. NMOSD can blind you, paralyze you, or even kill you in a moment's notice. However, thanks to the Mayo Clinic and Dr. Van der Linden, a blood biomarker was discovered, and that blood biomarker may not just lead to a cure. it could be the blueprint and looks like it's a blueprint for curing cancer. So get to the Guffey Jackson Foundation, learn more about this discovery and the Nobel Prize winning work of some of its doctors, and be a part of something that's worthwhile. Eric Mark is our favorite. Last word goes to you, buddy. Let's go fight some Soviets.
Let's go beat up on the Soviets. Nothing better than being on Combat Radio and Brigade Radio 1 and the home of my favorite people, and an opportunity to share with a broad swath of great people around the world. All of you, thank you so much for listening.
Well, we miss you, buddy. Much love to you. Congratulations on everything moving forward. Look forward to seeing how we can help you, and we'll catch you next time. See you.